I already know the title of this video is really going to irk some people, but if you can just stay calm and listen until the end, I can almost guarantee a vast majority of the people who watch this video will actually agree with me by the end of it. And I know that's a very tall order, but that's how confident I feel in my ability to prove this point. One major problem: people don't know how to plan. They don't bother planning. They are impulsive. They're nervous. They want something done right this second because they see how many executive orders are being signed left, right, and center pretty much nonstop lately. So they're like, we have to hurry. We need to try to put an end to this as quickly as he's signing executive orders. And the unfortunate fact of the matter is that is impossible. You cannot plan an effective protest that quickly. The first thing you need to understand when you're like, I don't like the way that something is being handled in my country, I want to exercise my rights to protest against this, is you have to, first off, find your community. There is a community that will back you up on how you're feeling. Start making videos, make posts on whatever social media platform you have right now. Do whatever you can to reach as wide an audience as you possibly can. I mean, we have things like Substack now where anyone can basically publish a newsletter every single week. Start getting people interested in that. Use social media platforms that have an algorithm that will work for you, like TikTok or Instagram Reels, where you're more likely to be pushed out to a wider audience quickly, even if you don't have many people following you. That is already going to take potentially weeks. And I know that sounds scary, but if you want something done the right way and the most effective way it possibly can get done, you've got to actually invest the time into it. And this, again, is also where you're going to have to put ego aside. Not everyone who wants to be a part of your community built around fighting back against the man, so to speak, has to follow you. Don't be offended because maybe your Discord, your closed-off Discord, all about a planned protest has more people in it than your YouTube account. Because at the end of the day, they're not here to be entertained. They're here to get the work done. So leave ego at the door. That's another issue I've seen people have. I've seen a lot of people that they have a decent amount of views on a video about a boycott they want to help create, but then they're all butthurt because everyone interacting with that video isn't following them. You're doing it for the wrong reasons then. You're not really trying to fight back against what you view as oppression. You're just trying to get likes and clicks and follows. So now you have your community. You guys collectively, not just one person, you collectively have to determine what sort of protest will be most effective to achieve your goals. Now let's break down this step because this is where most people already start to fail. And if you fail here, it's very difficult to get back up again. So they automatically just want to put out stuff to their community saying, we're going to do a general strike, or we're going to host a march, or we're going to host a boycott, and that's it. And they're like, oh, get together on, April 15th. That's the day that it's going to happen, and that's all you hear, and time and place. That already is not an effective plan. So again, there's multiple kinds of protests. There is a march, which delivers what, the name promises. You're meeting at a certain place and you are all marching with your signs, you're chanting, you're basically putting as many bodies in the street as you possibly can and trying to be as clear as you can with your chants and your march about what it is that you want right now. There are full-blown protests where you stake out a location. This isn't a march where you're just there a few hours. You put up tents, you put up like a whole community in this location. You've got people making food over here. You got people with blankets over here. You got people with their cars heated up for you to chill in over here. You have to really, really plan this one out. And if you plan this one out correctly, this can be the most effective form of protest, the full-blown stakeouts. I want you guys if you have access to TikTok, to follow a very specific creator as soon as you can, because her group has been some of the most successful version of this style of protest I've ever seen in my entire life. No exaggeration whatsoever. She and her group have been there since George Floyd unfortunately left this world against his will. And right off the bat, you might say, well, George Floyd passed quite a long time ago. If she's still there, clearly it's not that effective. It is. And there's a few very good reasons why. First off, her community knew what they wanted. Before they bothered staking out, before they decided to march, they sat down and they wrote a list of demands. They were like, this is every single thing we want to come out of this protest. This is every single thing we expect this city to do for us in order to get us to leave. And that's the other thing they decided. They were like, we do not leave the area we're staking out until every single demand on that list has been met. I don't care if it takes weeks. I don't care if it takes years. We do not leave as a collective until all the demands are met. Make sure you are specific. Really plan out what those demands are. Because if you have no demands attached to your protest, what is the point? You can't just say, well, I'm protesting because I don't like Trump. Okay, neither do a lot of people. What do you want from it, though? Instead of, I don't like Trump, you need to have something very tangible that can actually be achieved. Something like, we expect this executive order to be rescinded by, or we expect Congress to actually fight back in our best interests and draft a bill that says, that says that, like, trans people have the autonomy to make decisions about their own body, and no presidential candidate has the right to draft an executive order that says they cannot serve in the military. See, you need to have it be very, very specific, each demand. Next, you have to make sure you have enough copies of these demands that everyone gets them in your community. Make sure there are digital backups and hard copies both, because you want to be able to pass them out in the moment. You don't want to be sitting there flipping through your phone looking for if someone sees your protest and wants to know what's going on. And you want to make sure if the cops come, because they will, and they try to destroy the lists of demands, you still have a backup for it. And the other reason you need to have a lot of copies is because before and during your protest, you need to make sure the people you want to enact the change have copies and consistently send them out. All right, so you've been protesting for a week and nothing has been done yet. Send them again to your congressman, to the police, to the president. I don't care. Whoever has the authority to make the changes that are in your list of demands, that's who needs copies of it. Make sure that you consistently send them. Bother them. Elect people within your community whose sole purpose is to constantly call the representatives that are able to enact these changes, who just email them, who text message. You need a group of people in your community whose sole purpose is to sit there bothering people. Just make sure that you're doing it legally. There's some areas like state houses where you're allowed to be on the property as long as you're outside. Some of them you can be inside as long as you're not interrupting legislation. Look into the rules, because trust me, they will look for any loophole they can to try to arrest you. And speaking of arrests, this is another thing a lot of people have not been planning for, and then they panic and they never attend another protest again because they were not prepared for it. The cops will show up. Even if you only have 30 people, if they think there's some kind of demonstration, they will show up and they will do everything in their power to try to snuff it out, because it is not in their best interest to allow you to have this voice. And so you have to be very, very careful. Very, very careful. Do not listen to the people online saying to wear platform boots so that they can't tell what your real height is. You can't escape then. If you get some rogue cops at your demonstration who decide they're going to start open firing, how are you getting away in Herman Munster boots? Even if you are a goth like me and you're used to walking in them every day, or you have run at one point because blah, blah, blah happened, some dog was chasing you, cool, good for you. It's not the same as multiple cops open firing on you, I promise that. So wear sensible shoes that you can run quickly in. Next thing, before you even think of where you're going to do your stakeout at, you need to make sure you have community resources. If you carry out your demonstration correctly and your demands are eventually met, people are going to be there for the long haul. They're going to lose their jobs. They're going to lose their homes. They're going to lose their access to food. Some of them are going to go completely broke because they feel this is the right thing to do. You need to have some kind of community resource. You need to have volunteers in your community who are financially stable, who are able, like once a week, to bring clothing from the thrift store. You need to have people who are willing to let the demonstrators come and get a free shower. You need to have people who on a daily basis can come and offer meals to these people. So you need to make sure people are making food. Also take into account the fact that not everyone has the same dietary preferences or abilities. You're going to have some people who are celiac at your demonstration. You're going to have people who are vegan. You're going to have people who are deathly allergic to fish. Make sure you have different food set out for them if this is a multi-day demonstration so that they're actually fed properly. And make sure that you have people in your community who are willing to help bail people out of jail when they get arrested by the cops for demonstrating, because it is going to happen. This is an inevitability, not a possibility. They will arrest people. Sometimes people who are literally just walking in a straight line and doing absolutely nothing against the law whatsoever because rogue cop, they're pissed about it. They don't like that you're demonstrating at all. So they'll do whatever they can to shut it down. What is your community going to do for the people who get jailed for doing what you told them to do? Are you going to have a plan in place where you try to post their bail? Are you going to try to get them lawyers? Some of the protests that I've seen that are actually pretty effective, I end up getting text messages saying like, Troy got arrested tonight. This is exactly what he was doing. Here's the video evidence. He was being peaceful. He did nothing wrong. We need everyone to circulate this video and find a lawyer who can, talk on his behalf pro bono or as cheaply as possible so we can get him out of jail. There we go. You need to have people who are willing to become independent journalists at your demonstration. They need to constantly have their phone out. They need to constantly be live streaming and video recording. You need people who are there on the ground with you, video recording and demonstration. You also need people on Twitch, YouTube, wherever you're live streaming it, who are screen recording it, because sometimes you're going to be in the moment. You're not going to be thinking, and you're going to forget to hit the record button and just be live streaming, and then the evidence will be lost. You need to have people who are constantly recording the live streams to get evidence if someone gets attacked by the cops, if someone gets attacked by anti-protesters, the people protesting against your protests, because that's also something that's potentially going to happen. Another two things you need to keep in mind, regardless of the length of protest, whether it's a one-day march or a multi-day stakeout, is that you've got to give people enough time to plan. Right now, there are so many people trying to start protests in multiple cities across America. I understand why, and I know the intentions are good in this, but they all released videos on like January 31st saying, we're going to stage a protest against Donald Trump at blah, blah, blah city on February 5th from 9 to midnight. Okay, first off, what exactly are you protesting besides Donald Trump? Like, is it him being alive? Is it a specific issue? Is it all of the issues? You're not specific enough in what you're protesting. And it's going to be harder then to fight back when people attack you. And two, January 31st And then preparing for a protest on February 5th, that is not enough time for most people. They need to take time off work. They need to make sure they have the resources necessary to protest. They probably have to buy some stuff to protest effectively. You've given them no time, and some of them are going to have to travel a decent length away from home to join your protest. You just struck down so many people who would have happily marched alongside you because you simply didn't give them enough time. A majority of the issue with these protests that are just not going down the way people want them to and no changes being made come down to the fact that people aren't given enough time to plan for them. And I know where this issue is stemming from, because people have mentioned it 1,000,001 times online when they're like, oh, it only took Iceland like 1 day for all the women to go on a general strike before they were like, oh God, no, we have to hurry up now and meet their demands or the country is going to collapse on itself. And they're like, we can do that. We're a huge country. All it should take is 1 day and all our demands will be met, right? They're not understanding the context of that specific protest in that specific place at that specific time. So much came together for that to be a success. For one thing, Iceland is a much smaller country than the United States of America. So the population is much smaller, which means it hurt a lot more when all the women took off for a day than it would in America. For one thing, it would be very difficult to get every woman in America to protest for a whole day, just because of the sheer volume of them here. Then you have to consider what was happening politically, economically, socially, culturally in that specific place at that specific time. This is very similar to when people cherry pick the Bible, right? When you get really annoyed by certain like super evangelical Christians who get in your face because they're like, oh, here's this one specific little passage in the Bible that I'm taking totally out of context just to try to make a point that I don't like a certain person and I want a reason to be a bigot, and everyone gets annoyed. This is the protest version of that. You're cherry picking one specific protest that actually was successful, but you're not bothering to look into why it was successful. It wasn't just because people left. America, being a huge superpower with a large population of people, cannot protest the same way a teeny tiny country the size of one of our states can. It just doesn't work that way. We need a lot more planning and we need a lot more resources to pull something like that off. It makes more sense in a country this size to have multiple smaller protests going on than one giant general strike. And the general strike is another issue that consistently comes up. There's so many bigger creators too, and it makes me crazy. Bigger creators online, whether it's on YouTube, TikTok, whatever, who are just like, oh, we just need a general strike. Just do a general strike for like a solid week. And then it's really going to hurt them in the pocketbook. And then like Walmart, Amazon, all these places are going to have to just work with us and lower their prices. No, they're not. For one thing, they're richer than God already. What are you going to do about that? Okay, so they're going to have a bad month. They've had bad months before. They had it during COVID, and they're still rich, guys. So that already kind of moots that part of your plan out. And then a general strike. How many people, when you're scrolling through your FYP on TikTok or your Instagram Reels, or you're looking on the homepage of YouTube right now, how many people have you seen who are crying or who look panicked or who are angry and frustrated because they're like, another month is coming and going, and I have to decide whether I'm paying my rent or my electric bill on time this month because I can't afford to do both at once. Or the people showing, oh, I paid $160 for my groceries this week, and all I have is food for 3 days. What do I do? I'm so scared. What do I do? The food banks are empty. What do I do? I bet you've seen quite a few videos like that, right? You are expecting people who are in such a dire financial position right now that every single month they have to determine whether they're heating their homes or feeding their children to just not go to work for a month, to just not buy from the only affordable places for a whole month. And this is another more generalized issue with especially leftist protests. People don't consider the fact that there is nuance to every situation. The left often becomes the snake that eats itself. So an example of that with this stuff is people getting legitimately angry that people haven't cut Walmart and Amazon completely out of their lives yet. Like, I can't believe you guys are still shopping at those places. They're horrible. They treat their employees like dirt. They use slave labor to get their shit from other countries. They are screwing you over, like they're lobbying and they're way too involved in the United States government. So fuck you if you're still shopping at Walmart and Amazon right now. How could you do something like this? You're like betraying your political party or whatever. Okay, Sharon. Most people right now are making $15 or less per hour, and they are fighting for their lives to get even close to full-time hours. Most people are trying to earn a living off of $15 or less an hour right now for 20 to 30 hours of work per week. You expect those people when their rent is upwards of $2,000 to $2,500 in many cases now, or at the very least $1,500 and above, even for a small place. And groceries are costing an average of well over $100 even for one singular person to eat for an entire week. You're expecting them to somehow cut out the only affordable groceries. Trust me, they don't like it either. They hate Bezos. They hate the Waltons. They hate Walmart and Amazon just as much as you do for the same reasons. But you, who love to yell about this, have done nothing for your community to ensure that they don't have to use that. You've done nothing to make sure they can afford something that isn't Shein. You've done nothing to make sure they can get groceries and pantry items from somewhere other than Walmart. You've done nothing to make sure that they don't have to get all their furniture from Amazon. You're yelling a lot about it. You're yelling a lot about how could you do this? How could you betray people like you? It's such a horrible place to spend your money at. But where is the community resources to ensure they don't have to do that? You have not set aside a fund or a pantry or any other means of these people getting the items they need for the same price, because unfortunately, as someone who is one half of a small business, I can tell you we cannot match those prices. Small businesses are always going to cost infinitely more than these giant corporations because they're outsourcing and taking advantage of people in order to have their prices that low. So instead of sitting here shitting on people because of where they have to spend their money, because it's all they can afford right now, shut the fuck up and actually give a tangible way to not support it. And again, I see people going, oh, well, Costco, get a Costco membership because honestly, it's not that expensive there and they're not a corrupt company. All right. The nearest Costco to me is 3 hours away. 3 fucking hours away from my house. They are not everywhere. If you're in a big city, yes, you can find one quite easily. Most people don't have access. You know what? The only big giant store is where you can prepare for a month that I have? Sam's Club, which is Walmart, which means either I have to only get week-to-week groceries, which adds up quite a bit, or I have to go to something that's a subsidiary of Walmart. I am tired of it. Now, I have done brand deep dives on my channel before where I'm here's some of the shitty things these brands have done, but there's something I always make sure that I say in those videos. I always say, if you decide after listening to my video that you still want to support that brand or it's all that you can afford, I understand and I think no less of you. I just want to make sure you have the information necessary to make a correct moral judgment if you can afford that. And what's really sad is the other day on Blue Sky, I said, if you're able to cut Walmart and Amazon out of your budget, that's a good idea right now because here's all the horrible corrupt things that they're doing in the government. Someone thanked me for saying, if you're able, because she has been attacked that was refreshing to see someone say, I understand not everyone can do that right now. We are the snake that eats itself, and we need to cut that out before we can effectively protest anything, because at the end of the day, how is it helpful if you're saying, all right, general strike or boycott, but it's all someone can afford? So come up with your boycotts. Say for the entire month of July, we're all boycotting Amazon, or as many people as we can. And then say to any of you who want to boycott Amazon, but you cannot afford to, here are some resources. Here are some places in every single town or major city where you can get items that are just as cheap. I see very few people doing that. And you can't expect people to just hunt it down, because there's so much misinformation out there right now and not everyone knows how to vet it. You've got to handhold to an extent with this stuff. But yeah, basically, at the end of the day, people aren't thinking long-term when they're trying to plan out their protests. They're not thinking long-term. They're not creating a tangible plan, and they're not creating a list of demands. You need demands no matter how long or short your protest or your boycott is going to be, or it is simply not going to be successful. This is why I say most of the protests are doomed to fail. And they are. That's an absolute fact. Because I'm not seeing people do the planning. I'm seeing no plan other than meeting at a certain time and place, and that's it. I'm not seeing demands. I'm not seeing tangible solutions on how we're taking care of people who can't be a part of the protest because they can't afford it, or who could have something bad happen to them as a result of the protest. Watch Marcia's videos, for the love of God, please. Learn from her. Learn from people who are marginalized, because guess what? Marginalized communities are the only ones who have even sort of gotten anything done with protests. There are plenty of people who are Indigenous Americans who have successfully had some of their demands met. There has been some pockets of land given back. There have been some people in big oil who fucked off of a piece of land. It's not perfect, but there has been some success. With George Floyd Square, they have had some of their demands met. Not all of them, but some of them were met, and they celebrated when those moments happened, as they should, as they deserve. You need to actually learn, and do not approach a marginalized person and ask them what to do. The resources are there for free on the internet. Google it. Look on YouTube. Look on TikTok. Look on Reels. There are so many people who have already done full playlists on how to do this effectively. There are so many people who've already said, hey, you guys, as an Indigenous person, as a Black person, as a queer person, I'm going to tell you that, like, your plan right now, it's not good. They've already done the work. The least you can do is hunt it down yourself, rather than asking them to do free, difficult, emotional labor all over again. And if you're able to, if you find a creator who just does content all about how to protest and boycott effectively, how to enact great change, please tip them if they have their Venmo or something in their bio, because I don't think you guys understand how emotionally difficult it is even to make a video like this. It's a lot of emotional labor. It's a lot of physical labor, because you have to make sure that you are heavily researching various different towns and cities to make sure you know what their ordinances, their laws are. Make sure that people aren't going to get hurt when they enact these protests and stuff. A lot goes into it. So if you can, tip those people, please. That's all I really have to say on the matter. There's actually a lot more than this. There's more types of protests than the ones that I mentioned in this video. There's more things going wrong with the protests and more things that have gone right with past protests. But I want to encourage you to actually do some of the work yourself and look into it. Go find those creators and learn from them, please, 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 because this is just getting kind of ridiculous. We've created a pandemic of people protesting ineffectively in America, and I want you to be successful. But 9 times out of 10, I can't even tell what the protest is for, and that's already a problem. So until next time, Do something that makes you happy, so long as you're hurting no one else in the process. And I will see all of you again in the next video.